afternoon, parents. I want to give a little session on what we'll be learning this week in math. So our I can statement is I can round a number to the nearest 10 or 100. So without further ado, I'm going to use a couple of numbers and show you how I teach the kids and some of the vocabulary I use. So say for instance, I say, okay, we're going to round this number to the 1,958 to the nearest 10. So what I tell them to do, you have to underline the tens place because they're asking us to round to the nearest 10. You underline the tens place, you look at the number next door. If the number next door is 5 or bigger, you're going to add one more to the tens place. And so the song that I teach them, which is a really good trick, is We Will Rock You. So it's called Underline the Place, Look Next Door. If it's 5 or bigger, add one more. If it's less than 5, you leave it. Everything is equal to the core. So that is the little trick, the little song that I just sung that I teach them. But before I teach the kids that, we really focus on the number line. So then I tell them, okay, you have 1,958. If we're rounding to the nearest 10, we have to have our starting boundary and our ending boundary. So this is when that number line and number sense really comes to play. So their starting boundary number will be 1,950. Their ending boundary number, which is a vocabulary word, will be 1,960. What is your midpoint? 1,955. So let's locate where 1,958 will be. It's going to be probably about right here. So is it closer to the starting boundary or is it closer to the ending boundary? Well, Miss White, it's closer to the ending boundary because we might as well go to the ending boundary number than go back all the way to the beginning. So this is rounded to 1,960. So I'll show you another example. Underline the place. You look next door. If it's 5 or bigger, we add one more. Is this number next door 5 or bigger? No. So everything else is 0 to the core. But before I teach them the song is the last trick I teach them because parents, we really want the kids to understand where the number would fall on a number line because they will definitely see these a lot of problems. So I say, okay, what is our starting boundary? 60. What's our ending boundary? 70. What's the midpoint? 65. So is 63 between 60 and 65 or 65 and 70? Well, it's going to be about right here, which is 63. So class, it rounds back down to 60. So the answer would be what? 60. Here I'm going to teach you, and it's the same exact thing when we're rounding to the nearest 100. Underline the hundreds place. You look next door. Is that number 5 or bigger? Yes. So we need to add one more to the what's place, the hundreds place, because we're rounding to the nearest 100. Parents, one thing I did want to tell you is that the kids get confused a lot of times when the number that they're rounding, it already ends in a 9 or 0, especially if they don't have a real sense of numbers, because they're like, okay, well, what would it be? Well, what comes after 899? 900. So when I do ask them the boundary numbers, a lot of times the kids get confused because they're like, well, we're rounding to the nearest hundreds. So it's 800, 900. What's your midpoint? 850. So 899 is going to fall here and it rounds to 900. Now rounding to the hundreds is much easier than rounding to the tens place. Same exact thing here. Underline the place, look next door. Is that number 5 or bigger? No, so we don't add anymore. We're going to leave it 0 to the core. So I just taught you the song because the song is like I tell them that's our last tool in our toolbox. But you really want the kids to know. It's just like here. When I see 900 as the starting boundary, the kids get confused a lot of times. Okay, what's our ending boundary? Because what comes after 900 if we're rounding to nearest 100? Your ending boundary would be 1,000. Your midpoint is 950. But we already know that it's going to round back down to 900. So this is how I teach the kids how to round to the nearest 10 or to the nearest 100. A couple of words that they're going to hear in word problems is like nearest, estimate. They may even see approximately, or closest to. So some of those words we talk about, what is closest or nearest or estimate, approximately, those all mean to what? They all mean to round. So the last part that I'm going to show you, because I'm trying to keep it under 5 minutes, so sorry. I'm going to show you a couple of word problems. So here, for example, which group of numbers are closer to, here goes their vocabulary, closer to 30 than to 20 on a number line. So see here, they're having to look and they have to go through the answer choice and decipher. Here's another good question I'm going to show you here. Aiden places a diamond on the number line to locate the number 836. So that's when this number sense really comes into play. So they would place a diamond. This number is between 800 and 900, but closer to 900? No. More than halfway between 800 and 900. That's when that midpoint that I've been talking about comes into play. So they should already know the midpoint is 850. So is it between 800 and 900? So it will round to 900. Exactly halfway between 800 and 900. So it can round to either number. Less than halfway between 800 and 900. So it rounds to 800. And I even teach a class, sometimes they will not tell you if it's rounded to the nearest 10 or 100. That's when we have to look at the answer choices. So without further ado, that is what we're doing this week in rounding for math.